What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This. This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the Graviturgy Wizard, the one that is so alluring that it just pulls everybody to it. But is it worth sticking around afterwards? We will have to find that out. But before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. It is a new year, and I am super excited to be getting into some more content. I know that it's been a couple weeks on the D&D content, but we've had some interesting times getting the new computer set up, and of course Christmas being a thing and all that, but we're back. And so we've got, I believe, 6 more weeks of 2014 content, and then we are moving on to 2024, which is going to be a ton of fun. I have the new Player's Handbook ready to go, and I am reading through that to make sure that I am ready to cover all of that. So it's going to be really cool. So looking forward to that. We did not meet our sub goal, unfortunately, for the year. We came up about 80 subs short, but of course we are super close to 5,000 subs. So leave me a comment down below what you would like to see as a 5,000 subscriber special. We should be hitting that in the next month or so. And so let me know what you think down below. But the Graviturgy Wizard, it's really cool, right? So one thing I want to cover is that we had some confusion last time that I talked about something from the Wildemount book, right? We have already talked about Wildemount before, and I'll put that up in the iCard above. But the Wildemount books are considered official material. While they are written by Matt Mercer of Critical Role, it is, of course, going to be considered official because it was published by WotC. Now, the Tal'Dorei book, on the other hand, is not official. That is considered homebrew. So like the Blood Wizard that we've covered, which I'll throw up in the iCard above, that is homebrew. However, anything out of this book is considered official. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. If your DM allows anything official, this technically falls into that. This is interesting because now we are focusing on gravity. We focused on time before. We are now focusing on gravity. And this can be interesting, right? Gravity, of course, is going to indicate things like forced movement, which can be really good. And it can indicate things that are flying, having to hit the ground, or maybe even the opposite, things that are on the ground being able to go against gravity. But there's some interesting implications here. But is it something busted like what we talked about before, or is it not so good? Let's go ahead and find out. So starting off at level 2, we get adjust density. Now this one's a little complicated, but let's go through it. So with this, whenever we want to, we can use an action and choose an object or creature that is within 30 feet of us. That must be large or smaller, and then that target's weight is either halved or doubled for 1 minute or until our concentration ends. There is no saving throw on this. While the weight of a creature is halved, the creature's speed increases by 10 feet, and it can jump twice as far as normal, but has disadvantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. Alternatively, while the weight is doubled, the creature's speed is reduced by 10 feet, but it has advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. When we reach 10th level in this class, we can now target things that are huge or smaller. So this ability's pretty cool in how it's written. However, I will say that this is probably one of the most poorly written features that's in almost all of D&D. There are a couple that might be worse, but this one's kind of rough, and I'll tell you why. You know, Matt Mercer writes some really cool stuff sometimes, but there are also some things that he misses, and this is one that I think some things were missed, and it's going to be up to DM interpretation in a lot of ways. What I mean by that is we have some indication on what happens when you target a creature. However, this says that you can target both creatures and objects, but there are no rules on how you handle targeting objects. Okay, so what happened? It's not just, you know, you target a rock and now the rock weighs twice as much and it rolls down a hill and does that. That's not what I'm saying. This is when you target someone's armor or weapon or something in a pocket, or what happens then? There's no rules on this. It does not say. So if you target someone's armor, does that mean that the disadvantage carries over? Is that what that means? You know what I mean? Do you get the speed is reduced, but do they also get the advantage if their armor is doubled? I would argue not, but that's not listed here, right? If you have armor, does their speed increase but they don't have the disadvantage on the strength checks? Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense here, right? And it's hard because this is a second level ability, so you really don't want to make this too powerful without it being crazy. Yes, it does require concentration, which I think is not great. But there's a lot left up to interpretation here, and I don't know that I can definitively say this is exactly how things work, because I really think that your DM is going to be the one that makes that decision in a lot of cases. And I just think this leaves a lot to interpretation instead of just laying out how things should work. So to me, there's just so much of a wild card here that I have to imagine that most DMs are going to err on the conservative side and are going to restrict this more than they are going to just kind of let things happen. And so because of that, I'm going to have to rank this lower with an asterisk saying that if your DM is a little more liberal with things, then maybe this goes higher. But to me, taking a more conservative approach, saying that it doesn't do all the crazy stuff that I'm thinking it maybe could if your DM wants to do that, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think that it's good. It's good. There's no saving throw, but it does require concentration. To me, I think this is really nice here at second level, but I think beyond second level, I think that it definitely gets worse and worse as it goes. So I don't think the scaling is great, even when you get access to the huge creatures later on. At level 6, we get Gravity Well, and this one's actually kind of cool. So with this, whenever we hit a creature with a spell, we can actually move them 5 feet. So this can work whenever a creature is willing, whenever we hit with an attack, or if the creature fails a saving throw. This is really neat, actually, right? This reminds me a lot of the telekinetic feat, which we've taken a lot here on the channel because it's good. Forced movement is amazing. So this could mean you cast a spell that is maybe a positive spell on one of your allies, and then get them out of melee with something that it does not want to be in melee with. This can be you cast something gnarly against an enemy and you push them away from an enemy that's within 5 feet. This could be that you fireball something. There's no limit on how many creatures that this can target during one thing. So you could fireball a bunch of creatures and then move them all if you wanted to. There's no limit on that. So definitely could be pretty cool. And I think that there's a lot of use to this. Forced movement is great. Forced movement is always great. I always am going to recommend having something like this around. And honestly, I don't know why there aren't more features like this in Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like this is something that is really, really cool. So to me, this is a 9 out of 10. Forced movement as part of your normal spell casting, no restrictions on it really. I can't really go wrong. It's really good. At level 10, we get Violent Attraction, and this allows us to just add on a little bit of extra damage to other people's attacks, and a little bit more. So with this, whenever a creature within 60 feet of us is hit with a weapon attack, we can use our reaction to increase the attack's velocity and deal an extra 1d10 damage of that weapon's type. Additionally, if a creature is falling within 60 feet of us, we can use our reaction to increase that fall damage by 2d10. We can, of course, do this a number of times per day equal to our intelligence modifier, and we get those back after a long rest. This is interesting, and it works well, of course, with your barbarians and your fighters and all of that stuff. It is a weapon attack, so it doesn't necessarily have to be melee. It could be something that is ranged as well. Any of that's really cool. Now, to me, it's of course going to be 4 to 5 times per day, hopefully at level 10. So you're going to be getting a decent amount of use of this. The fall damage is interesting, although very situational. So you're going to have to find some way to get an ally, so you're going to have to find some kind of way to get an enemy to fall. This, of course, could be, say you have a warlock on your squad that's doing some strats that push people up in the air and then they fall. You could combo with that to deal some extra damage. There's some cool stuff here for that. But either way, I don't know that I could say that the damage here is incredible or is insanely good at 10th level. It's 1d10 5 times per day, so 5d10 per day, and of course it does use up your reaction. Not that you were using your reaction for a ton anyway, most likely, but still I think that it's not insane amounts of damage here at level 10. If this was earlier, maybe, but at this point it's not anything incredible. So for me, I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10. I just don't think that the amount of damage is insane enough here. And like I said, you getting someone to fall reliably, that requires a very specific setup, and so you'd have to be working with an ally to make that happen, which is possible. Like I said, warlocks can do that with certain builds, but either way, I think that it's just a little too specific for me to say that it's, you know, broadly applicable like what I normally would do in my rankings. Finally, at level 14, we get Event Horizon, and this allows us to pull people towards the ground by creating a little pocket of gravity, which might be cool. So with this, as an action, we can choose to create a powerful field of gravitational energy that pulls at other creatures up to 1 minute or until concentration ends. For that duration, whenever a creature hostile to us starts its turn within 30 feet of us, it has to make a strength saving throw, and if it fails, it takes 2d10 force damage and its speed is reduced to 0. On a successful save, it takes half as much damage and it becomes essentially difficult terrain. Once you use this, of course, you cannot do it again until you finish a long rest or until you expend a 3rd level spell slot or higher. This reminds me a lot of Ivard's Black Tentacles. It's very similar, actually. So to me, here it is, a 14th level feature that is the same as what, a fourth level spell? Yes, you get to use a 3rd level spell slot on it later, which I guess is technically better, but either way, it's a 14th level feature, being able to use the equivalent, roughly, of a 4th level spell. Not the best trade-off, especially because it requires concentration. That is now the 2nd feature in this subclass that requires concentration. That is a direct conflict, right? When I talk about good subclass design, I talk about things that can all work together and all help each other out. You now have 2 features that are in direct conflict with each other because you can't do that. And they're in conflict with any of your normal spells that you normally would be casting as a wizard. So you have to really make a decision. Am I going to adjust density? Am I going to do an event horizon? Or am I going to concentrate on one of my millions, what it feels like, of amazing concentration based spells? That's a hard decision, and to me, at level 14, the answer is probably not going to be this. I'm probably going to want to concentrate on something a little bit more powerful, unless I'm just out of spell slots for whatever reason. So to me, I think that this gets overshadowed. While it's interesting, it deals 2d10 damage or half as much on a save, and then you can reduce speed and that kind of thing. To me, I don't think that it's worth a 14th level feature over the other things we have access to. So personally, I'm going to say this isn't great. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I just don't think that it is worth us using it all that much here at this level. It just falls flat for me. So what do we think of the Graviturgy Wizard? It is certainly not as good as the previous wizard from this book. I definitely do not have as strong of feelings for this as I did before. I really thought, at least on first read, I was like, okay, this kind of sounds cool. But when you really dive deep into this subclass, there's a lot that's left to be desired here. The clunky and just missing wording of adjusted density really hurts this a lot because, like I said, I'm going to usually err on the conservative side of things here just because it's a 2nd level feature. If it's not written that it can do it, I'm probably going to not allow it to do it because it's only 2nd level. And so that's tough. Plus, it requires concentration. So that's hard too, especially with Event Horizon also requiring concentration. And like I said, I don't think Adjust Density really scales all that well. And then Event Horizon, I just think comes online way too late compared to what you can do with Ivard's Black Tentacles. I just don't think that it's worth it. Then, of course, Gravity Well, I think, is kind of the saving grace here. I think that feature is fantastic, really, really good, worth using all the time. There's no restrictions on it. That feels good. Violent Attraction leaves a little bit to be desired, too. I just don't think there's enough damage to justify a 10th level feature with what it is, right? This depends on you being up in the fray, roughly. It's 60 feet, which is really good. Being somewhat nearby your allies, and then making sure you use your reaction. Of course, you have 2 different ways you can do this. and both are on reaction. So if you target one creature, but then somebody else sets something up for a fall, and then you don't have your reaction yet, right, you've already used it, and so you've technically got half the damage that you could have gotten before if you weren't sure. This, of course, if you're going to do the falling damage, to do anything reliably, you're going to have to set this up with an ally, and so I can't say that this is something that's going to happen reliably unless you've worked this out prior. To me, I think this subclass just kind of falls flat. Do I think it's a failure? It's on the cusp. I really do think it's on the cusp. To me, I think it's good enough to not get a rewrite, but barely. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. It's like a 6.7 that's getting rounded up to a 7, honestly. I think it's on the low end of 7s. It's just tough because I think having 2 concentration features is rough. Having Violent Attraction not deal as much damage as I would like definitely could be better. But man, Gravity Well's really good, and that's kind of the tough part, because I think you can really do a lot with Gravity Well, and to me that's saving this. If that feature wasn't as good, this would not be a good subclass at all, and it definitely would have failed. So let me know your thoughts on the Graviturgy Wizard down below. Was I too harsh? Is there something I missed about this? I would love to know down below. Later this week, we're going to be building one together, and I'm looking forward to that. And we have our final week of the UNPL Fall Brawl Little Cup Championship going on this week as well. So make sure you check that out on Saturday. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.